The Long Cold, a Clovis story. The boy's name was Tyen, which meant new moon in the old tongue, though the stars he was born under no longer followed the old rhythms. His people lived along the edge of a broad, grassy plain that fed into a marshland teeming with mammoth, giant bison and birds that painted the sky like black smoke. They were Clovis people, known by the fluted stone points they carved from river rock, and by the stories their elders carried in low voices around the fire. Tyen's father Kanu was the toolmaker and chief hunter. His mother Sola shaped hides into warmth, and his older sister Aina walked like wind, quiet, fast, always watching. The seasons had always cycled. There was warmth and game, then wind and frost. Always they returned to the same hunting grounds when the sun climbed high again. But then came the night when the sky burned. Tyen remembered it not as fire, but as light, a sudden white flash on the horizon that turned night to day. The ground trembled. Birds screamed into the sky. A great wind howled across the plain and knocked down trees like scattered bones. The old ones fell silent. Days later, the ash began to fall, gray like snow. It coated the marshes, choked the rivers, and silenced the mammoth herds. Tyen watched as the bison fell ill. Their tongues swelled and their bodies wasted. When Kanu carved a new spear, he prayed not just for food, but for guidance. Then the cold came. At first, it was just a longer frost, but it did not relent. Spring never came. The ponds iced over and stayed that way. The wind bit like a predator with no name. Fires had to burn all day, and still the young grew sick. Some whispered it was punishment from the sky spirits. Others said it was death riding on the tail of a comet, something vast and ancient that shattered above the world and changed the breath of the earth itself. The people who remained gathered in tighter bands. They no longer followed the great herds because there were no herds. They hunted what they could find: rabbits, foxes, anything that moved. Sola taught Tyen to scrape every inch of marrow from bone. Ina learned to snare birds from bare branches and mend cloaks from scraps of hide and sinew. Kanu became gaunt, but his eyes stayed bright. One morning, as they walked a river frozen solid, Tyen asked his father, "Will the warmth ever return?" Kanu looked out over the blank white world and said, "It has gone to sleep." But nothing sleeps forever. Years passed. Tyen grew tall. He learned to flintstone from the old caches. Reworking old Clovis points his ancestors had left behind. He no longer saw mammoths. The world had shifted. He hunted elk now when they came. His generation learned to survive, not to follow. They adapted, not just in tool, but in thinking. And one